Stack sides, feeling brown, I got no cash. Can't afford the tip, got me feeling kinda sad, but we glad. I sleep up your whole bag, selling my chairs to get a couple cents. I'ma suck it next week, cause I hit my limit. Never with a swan, just to get some digits. Good for you, stay back, I ain't talking fence. You know what I mean, take bad decisions.
Yo, Q.
Okay. What's up, guys? Welcome to Have Fun Stacking Sats. Today, I have FalseFaucet. FalseFaucet is an OG Bitcoiner, a legendary stack chainer, and aside from being a legendary stack chainer, he also operates the stack chain Mempool. What's going on, False? How's it going, man?
Hanging in there, Ant. You know, living another day here. Tired after work, but, you know, glad I got the weekend coming. How about yourself?
TikTok next block.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You know, it's around Thanksgiving time right now, so traveling around, eating food.
Yeah,
all that
had a
kind of
good day
stuff.
yesterday with the family. Got like nephews and stuff. They're always crazy, man. They were like the entertainment for the night. It was a good time.
Definitely. So, False, what was your Bitcoin journey like? Tell us about your Bitcoin journey.
Okay. So the thing that really kind of pulled it all together for me, and I figured it out like after like 2 or 3 years of being in it. People talk about touch points with Bitcoin. You know, you might hear about it in just a random conversation you're hearing or something. And, what is that? You never think about it. You hear it a second time. It clicks a little bit more. You're a little bit more interested. And then, you know, usually like the third or fourth touch, it's like you're either in it or you're not. It's kind of like it's almost like the the Fermi paradox, you know, where it's like the great filter of like
Right.
what like correct like gets you through the next like Kardashev scale society or whatever. Like it's like that for Bitcoin. Like feel like there's so many touches and you either get it or you don't. First touch was in 2013 in college. Roomed with a bunch of baseball players. Tried to help them, you know, Silk Road stuff, but I was just the nerd on the floor. So, you know, they came to me and I didn't know anything about it. First touch, didn't pay any attention to it. Heard about it again in 2017. So like after it was running up and then this whole block size war. And I didn't have like a concept of any of these like core ideas of Bitcoin money. You know, I was a nerd, but I didn't have like the computer science background of a, you know, nerd, if you will. So
you weren't that kind of nerd.
Yeah, I was yeah, I was a nerd, but I wasn't the useful nerd, right? Then so block size wars and stuff. And then of course, like anyone else, I got into fucking shit coins. And like it was funny the other day, I don't remember where I saw it. It was probably in my the app I use for podcasts. I still use Google. Fuck it. Sorry. Are we allowed to swear? Is that
Yeah, until YouTube bans us or something. I have no idea. So
Okay,
we're still
sorry.
doing this. So I don't think we get enough attention.
That's fine. I didn't want to just come on and start dropping F-bombs. Anyways, so block size wars, shit coins, and see this podcast pop up. And I remember this is called like Bad Boy Crypto or some bullshit like that. And I had this like realization moment of like, it was how stupid some of these people were. That was also like they were just shills nonstop. They would show anybody that would come on their podcast. They didn't give a shit about any like quality of any of the quote unquote projects. And it was like listening to that bullshit for like a month or two. I was instantly just like, these aren't good people, you know? And then so it was, you know, I had some Bitcoin, obviously, you know, had some ETH, but it was that like 2017 and like the bear market of 2018 when I like started to buy and, you know, the conviction of just going all in to Bitcoin and getting rid of all the bullshit, just it like brings an inner peace, man. I don't know. It's just something about it. Like I just, the security that I feel and the the securities that it gives. Like, it was like a whole different experience. And then learned about money and like, because of course at the time, I think like most people, it was number go up, right?
Sure.
I still had this fiat mindset of like, I was just learning about stock market and stuff. And it was like, oh, how can I invest and make more fiat dollars? And as I learned, and then like the biggest thing for me was learning about money and like, what is money and, how it affects your life. Even, we've talked about in the past as being Americans, there's certain, you're almost like, I don't want to say blinded to it because you feel it, but it's just not as prevalent. You don't feel it as much as people in other countries that, are affected by what the US does with the dollar.
On a good year, our dollar is only debased 2%. It's hardly noticeable.
Correct. And so realizing all that was like totally the orange pill moment of like, oh, this is like fundamental to like society and commerce, and our money is shit. And like, here's this thing that like, I thought I was just going to sell in a couple years, maybe for more dollars. And it's like, I don't even want dollars anymore. Like and then that whole transition, some people, talk about how it changes their habits and stuff, cause it changes your time preference. A lot of my habits haven't changed, but my savings is like on a whole nother level.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I can appreciate that. So, there's a lot to unpack there. So like what separated you from shitcoins?
What separated it from shitcoins for me? It was, like I said, it was after so long of this unit bias that like, oh, I can buy 10, I can buy 1 million of these coins. And if it goes up a penny, like, oh, I'm a rich guy, I just made a year of salary. And it was just, yeah. And people can do that. Like, I always like to say, listen, you can try and do that. That's just not me. I'm not a good trader. I tried to trade Bitcoin before. That is not what I want out of it. Maybe like I said, we talked about it, I wanted that before, but you just progress away from it. You realize what you can have, like that actually.
So I feel like there's a connection because I've heard like 3 or 4 people say it, and the big thing about shitcoins is like that established connection to fiat, right? So when a lot of people buy Bitcoin for NGU, they see the volatility. 100%. And then they see the price is low and they're like, oh, this might be a good time. If I buy it now, in a year or two, it can be worth a lot. I'll make a ton of money. Mm-hmm. So if that's where you're at, then, shitcoins can be pretty compelling for that exact same reason. So
yes,
the separation from shitcoins typically happens when you understand that Bitcoin is not that kind of thing. It's something different.
It's its own beast.
When you get to the point where you're like, no, you know what? I don't think I am going to sell my Bitcoin for dollars. Then suddenly, okay, why do I even have these shitcoins then? Because,
correct. I tweeted something out before that's like, I feel like because that is such a normal progression we see of people coming from like a no coiner, being like a pre-coiner, a shit coiner, and then a Bitcoiner. You can almost kind of see it like a path that most people take, right? And it's this fiat mindset that has you, like you said, you're thinking about number go up. You're thinking in dollar terms. You're thinking, how can I make more of this money that I trade my time for? Like that was another big thing for me. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but like people always said like money is time and time is money. And you hear all these adages that as you get older, different sayings, like once like understanding money, that whole thing was like, I was like, holy shit, like that is factual. Like you go to work to get paid and you're going to pay someone else to do something to save you time so that you don't have to do it. That was like mind boggling once that settled. And I feel like that's part of like, once you understand money, you, like you said, you go from this, like you're about the fiat gains to, because in that mindset, that is your savings. That is, you're trying to get more money, more value saved so that you can do less things in the future or just, God forbid, preserve the value that you create. And once you realize that Bitcoin is a better vessel for that, it's like, I don't care about number go up. I care about, we talk about sats go up. Like that's right, as long as you got more sats tomorrow than you have today. I mean, that whole mind shift or mindset shift is crazy. That's a very good point that you brought up.
The idea of savings is ingrained in us, right? So like go to work or like go to school, do good, go to college, get a degree, get a job, earn money. But like what is money is never presented to us. That's just it's the green stuff. It's a spreadsheet. It's numbers on your bank app, and so we just accept that because there's no other way to measure it. And then once you start measuring value in Bitcoin, you notice a difference. Well, there was another thing that you were saying. Completely and totally slips my mind. But yeah, essentially, the what is money thing is completely lost on people because people they learn the value of money in our society and culture. Like they learn that they have to work for it, but they don't actually learn what money is. So what do you think one of the most compelling pieces of what Bitcoin is, like how it is money that really like was like a light bulb?
Well, I think I talk about maybe in like a piece that I read that I thought explained it very well. And, you know, I'm not necessarily a math guy, but like, I'd much rather understand like, you know, like, or someone give me like, you know, numbers to show a proof rather than just being like a philosophical type of thing. Right. You know what I mean? I kind of like hard data, right? I mean, that's why people like Bitcoin, I can verify, like not like just taking someone's thoughts. And as much as I'm not a big fan of his anymore, Breedlove made that, what's the name of it? It was, talking about agri-beads and all that.
Sure.
Hold on, I got to figure out what that is now. It's bothering me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
But anyways, it was that, and they were talking about like going through like the slave trade and talking about how stuff was, you know, the money was exploited, and they just mass produced these, you know, glass beads because they had they were further, they were able to produce them much cheaper than what the economy that used them perceived the work to take to produce them. So they just flooded it and basically like bought slaves and talked about like the time theft involved with it.
Agri-beads is one of the most heartbreaking examples that's given in things like the Bitcoin. So for those of you who don't know, throughout history, money has been different things. Money is actually a technology. So you know, I'm sure that you're aware of dollars as money. I'm sure that you're aware of gold as money. But throughout history, there were other things that were money. In Africa, pre-colonialization, there were some places in Africa where the money they used was glass beads because glass beads were very difficult to manufacture. They're portable. Like you can put them on a string on a necklace. They're divisible. So it's like, you know, it could be 10 glass beads for, I don't know, a chicken, or 20 glass beads for a goat. It worked really well. It's a pretty ingenious system. When these places were, you know, discovered by colonial powers, the colonial powers recognized that they were using these agri beads as money, and because the colonial powers were industrialized, they could go back to their home country and use machines to mass produce these beads. So this whole economic system that these you know particular people in Africa were using was based on the difficulty and the scarcity and the proof of work of beads. And then the colonialists just came in and were able to just mass produce their money. They bought everything. They destroyed their economy. And by the time that was done, their money, they started calling it slave beads. So their money actually turned against them and enslaved them because, you know, mass production of money. And it happens time and time again in history. Same thing happened with seashells, rye stones.
Well, you see these, you know, each of these small different areas, you know, before that we were such a globally connected world, or like interconnected world, everyone had their own little subset economy that used their own money. Like some were shells because shells were rare there. But, you know, if you're a colony on the beach, close to water a lot. Like you couldn't use shells. There, the whole idea of money with it being some type of scarce asset that, at the end of the day does take time to either acquire or produce. And like you talked about, them coming in and just being able to, because they were more industrialized nations, they were just able to abuse it. And it's terrible. But then you see other things like, I don't know if you know much about, like, I know a little bit with the rye stones. I can't remember what island it is, but that's one of the more peculiar ones where it's like,
I think it's Palau.
Okay.
I feel like it's Palau. Yeah.
Couldn't remember. But like, you have these giant stones that like almost the proof of work is like moving them, right?
Yeah.
Like you want this, I owe you, you got to move it over to your farm for that goat, or, I'm not sure if that's exactly how it worked. But I can just imagine these different, mechanisms for making something.
I actually know that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The rice stones, they're made out of a stone that's not found on the island.
Okay.
So in order to get the rice stones, you would have to go to another island, and they would have to manufacture the stone from that island. And these things were enormous.
Yeah.
Take it on a canoe and bring it back to your island. So as a result of doing that, they were scarce.
Yeah.
Because you and a bunch of your buddies had to get your asses on a boat and go basically grab a giant rock and float it back to your island. Back.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
The proof of work on that was so spectacular. It worked so well. They didn't even move them. Like once, like they would just get it on the island, and because it was a monument, everybody is just aware of it.
Yeah.
So if I made a transaction, I would just be like, rice stone that's by the 3 palm trees that no longer belongs to me. I gave it to False because False built a house for me. And the stone itself didn't actually move.
Never move. Yeah.
It was a ledger. It was just a social consensus ledger system.
Okay.
It was so good. It was so good that they had one rice stone that they brought to the island. But before it got to the island, the boat overturned or something and fell into the water. And it fell so far that nobody could see it. But enough people remember seeing them brought it that they're like, that counts. So the rice stone at the bottom of the water was a part of the ledger system.
It was in the circulation,
despite the fact that they can't see it.
That's interesting.
Everybody just agreed on it.
Yeah, because I guess I'm just overthinking this, but also you would think that they would have to have a semi. Well, I guess at the time you didn't know anything else. You didn't, you weren't ever going to expand off of this island. I guess it was very, I don't want to say short-sighted, but limited on the scope of, the greater possibilities. Because, if you're going to move to a different, well, I guess it doesn't matter because no one does move them, right? Like you said, it's all
I mean, they've lived there for generations.
At the bottom of the lake.
It worked. It worked for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, these things are just a function of the world becoming a smaller place because of industrialization. So the same thing that happened to people in Africa happened to the people that used the rice stones. Some random, I think it was a Irish explorer found them.
Okay.
And then he figured out that they were using these stones for money, but because he had like steam powered ships, or maybe not even steam powered, just better sailing vessels.
Yeah.
He just went to the island with modern tools, carved up a whole bunch of rocks, brought him back. Now he's the richest man on the island, and just screwed up their whole economy. But before the economy got destroyed, he got to spend all that money.
Yeah, he was the, as we say, he was the quintillionaire of there, right? He was the closest to the money spigot.
It's exactly what the Fed is doing right now.
Exactly. And then once you get that, and then you realize that Bitcoin is a money for everybody, like, within its, if you looked into that, like its hash horizon, like, so that could even be past Earth, like you could still be in sync with the blockchain if you're within like, I think they said like within like 6 minutes of, because on average, obviously it's 10 minutes, but you get blocks quicker. But so just the concept of that being able to service everybody and everyone everywhere is just it puts it on like a whole other thing.
With L2, you can service the entire universe.
Layer 2, well, I mean, I would say I don't know enough about that. I guess the one thing I saw cool that they were talking about is having like, ones that just have different hash horizons and they would just sync with each other. It would be like almost like a whole nother node that's syncing with like the Earth node. I mean, I don't know exactly how that works. That's real like philosophical shit, way above my knowledge level. But it's just really cool to think about. Did you watch any of the or see the time chain codex that Fractal Encrypt and some of the other guys did?
No, but I remember the discussion about the idea of slowing down the blockchain
Okay.
so it could reach further out.
So you're talking about a longer block time average,
Yeah.
so that the hash horizon, which would be the space that could still be in sync with the blockchain, would be greater. It's like I said, I don't know. That's way above my knowledge.
Yeah, no, I'm not that smart. But what Fractal Encryption, he's the one that does all that artwork.
Those full
right?
node sculptures. Yeah, they did a bunch of. They put together a little story, like a little fan fiction type of thing, and did all the art with like AI generated art, like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, which are these, prompt based AI art generating AIs. It's really, really crazy stuff that you can do, and they're just getting better and better. But yeah, they did a really good job. They open sourced it. PDF is free to download. Anybody can go download it and check it out. So it's really cool. If you like that like science fiction stuff and you're into Bitcoin, it's a really cool mashup. I would highly recommend.
Well, I also figured like with an L2, because as long as the time chain is functioning with some kind of L2, you have a multi-sig agreement that you can sync to the chain, right? So you could say, here's a multi-sig agreement, and we're going to time lock this in for, I don't know, 100,000 blocks or something, or like a really long time.
Yeah.
And so all Bitcoin that transfers in this multi-sig, it all happens in this L2.
I see where you're going at.
So that way, let's call it like space lightning or something. Okay. So
like
you take your space lightning,
that, Anthony.
you take it to like whatever planet, and you're doing whatever because of the time lock back on Earth. You know that nobody's rugging you while you're away from the.
It's the same concept of how Lightning works now, where you're just locking up funds on chain to be able to use in a second layer that will settle then eventually to the main thing, not the main thing, the main
precisely
thing, the base layer. And that's cool, and that's the other thing too is like people always say that's it's cliche. Oh, we're so early. Seeing how like Lightning is developing, and just like even just being one of those people that run a node and just saying like, that's what I'm looking for, like ancillary to stuff. Like I'm not even like deep dive into it, but like just seeing all the stuff that's being put together on this it's crazy. I don't know. When I first found Bitcoin and came into Bitcoin, like I said, we always talk about number go up, but it was like, oh, this is like a ledger where I could just like move funds, and just like how much that has been not abstracted away, but expanded on, and the different things you can do. I don't know, man. Every day my mind's blown, and since PB, man, that's just like I need to do something. Like I put in some job apps. I found some miners around me. One guy told me to call them back in spring, so that was cool. We'll see what goes on with that. Yeah, I mean, it could just be like, hey, we're not dealing with this right now. Try again later. But it wasn't like an outright no, so I was like, okay, fuck yeah, So yeah, just being around Bitcoiners was like a whole nother experience too, and I'm sure everyone probably dealt with it at Thanksgiving, but I've got relatives that know I'm the Bitcoin nephew or whatever, and everyone wants to like throw shade, and
we live in two different worlds for sure.
Oh my god, yeah, and it's funny. It's crazy.
The world where Bitcoiners discuss Bitcoin is like there's like an entry fee to just enter that world, and I would say it's like hundreds of hours of education, but not necessarily.
That's just to feel confident enough to talk in the conversations, right? I personally, when I first got into it, I was so reserved, and I didn't even have like a Twitter account for the first year. I just lurked. And then you build up this knowledge, and like you said, hundreds of hours, and then you feel confident enough to where you feel like you can contribute useful information. I mean, I think that was a big step.
So I don't even think that's it. So, for example, earlier you said that saving your time and energy makes you feel secure, right?
Mhm.
So to people who don't understand Bitcoin, that sounds foreign. Like you just said that, saving my time and energy in marbles makes me feel secure. They don't have the concept. It's just like, what? No, that's what dollars are for.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, man, that goes way up in value and then it comes down in value and then it was all the way up here and then it crashed. And it was all the way up here and then it crashed. So like that's they're just like, wait, so I mean, do you feel like, driving 200 miles an hour on the freeway? Do you feel secure about that? It sounds like crazy talk.
Yeah.
So to go to a place where there are not Bitcoiners, it's like you can't even have the conversation because they're not like caught up with like core
They don't have
principles.
the prerequisites.
If I started talking about rhinestones and agri beads, I don't even have to mention the word Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. They were just like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
But like you said, it is just two different worlds, man. And it's that transition from one to the next. It's a big step, and we take it for granted now, but I think I can look back and say it was a difficult step. Like it was this idea of like foregoing what I thought about not only my government, but about the money I use and, how I thought the world worked, how I thought the world might have been kind of fair and like letting go of, because, like as you grow up and
but see, that's the thing. People know the world is not fair.
Yeah.
People know the system doesn't work.
Yeah.
They know everything's wrong. They know things are not right.
They just don't have the right answer for what the problem is.
But yeah, taking that step towards Bitcoin is just like, it's a bridge too far. And obviously it's because it's like learning another language. Like we all grow up, our native language is dollars. Mm-hmm. So like even the idea of like pricing something in sats is like a translation, right? You're just like, okay, this is this candy bar is $1. That's 2,000 sats or 1,500 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like speaking a different language. And so I get that barrier, but there's even more than that because like as a Bitcoin, I went through all these steps, just like you explained, where there was that first touch with Bitcoin. I bought some. It was all about NGU. I'm going to be rich. Woo. Okay, that didn't happen. And then it's shit coins, and then it's learning. And I had a very good understanding of Bitcoin and knew for sure that I shouldn't be holding all these other shit coins and I shouldn't have Ethereum. They serve no purpose, but I still held on to them for a long time.
Yep.
And so, because logic and conviction are like not the same thing. Doubt is so much stronger than logic.
Oh, sure.
If you walk up and down the stairs to your home every day, logically those stairs are safe. If one person says, "Oh man, I think are your stairs okay?" You might fall through those stairs. Now, forever, you're afraid to walk up and down the stairs that you've been walking up and down because doubt is so much stronger than logic. So I can see by the look on your face that you understand what I'm talking about. So what do you think are some of the things that can just like get people past that doubt to accept logic?
Well, I think I think people are predisposed to Bitcoin to an extent. Obviously, like libertarians have this like freedom mindset that is very, gels well with Bitcoin. I think, also just like you have to have a like innate, like just curiosity, right? Because like there was no, in the beginning, in my mind, there wasn't any, before I realized that number go up was a thing, there wasn't like any financial gain out of it. I was like actually intrigued as what was going on. Like, how does this work? What is this? What is all this, Bitcoin shit they're talking about? But as you, like we said, as you see it for what it is, it takes courage too, because you have to make that step. It's not like something that somebody's going to do for you. You have to kind of You have to have like this whole mind shift of what you, like I said, like just how you think the world works. And maybe, like I said, this could just be me. Maybe I was naive. I will be the first one to maybe say
No,
that.
I don't think
But
so.
but just the whole turn on its head of but I think that's also part of just getting older. If you've been on this planet longer and longer, you start to look at things differently. But
Maybe.
being able to ask questions, my parents did a very good job of allowing me to ask questions that maybe weren't popular. Like I did my senior project on the 9/11 conspiracies, and I went to school and talked about how, like, oh my God, hey. And at this point, there was no like political knowledge around it. It was just, oh, these people are talking about like, oh, these planes can't do this. Well, can it? Like, well, let me look into it and blah, 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 blah. Most parents are like, hey, you cannot do that. Same with my school, right? My teachers knew what my project was, but they allowed me to have this curiosity to ask questions that might, step on toes. And so it was very easy once, like, oh, well, this is what I thought money was, and someone's telling me something different. It's like, oh, well, like I want to jump into that. And I always like to say, like, I like to understand the conspiracy theory. I don't like to what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't want to make guesses. I don't want to be that. I like to talk in facts, right? So there's like certain things that are factual about conspiracy theories. Now, if you want to draw those lines, oh, I get it. But if you talk about the facts and just lay it out, a lot of the times, I mean, the lines kind of, draw themselves. For certain things, of course, right? I'm not trying to get into like a broad term of conspiracy theories, but there are certain things that's like, like especially what you see now. Like at first I thought people talking about the World Economic Forum and all this shit were like crazy. And then you start to just read and like go, ask the hard questions and do your own research. That's the biggest thing. Like I'm going to call out people on Bitcoin Twitter because I hate it all the time, but they'll repost shit that is fake. And it's like, you talk about, verify, don't trust, yet you're just,
Sure.
because it's your bias and it's what you think is the way it is, you just retweet it. And it irritates the shit out of me because it's like this. I think that's one of the best memes of Bitcoin, right? You don't trust, verify. Like
Don't
you have
trust,
everything
verify.
at your disposal to
Yeah.
not have to do that. Or should I say to minimize the trust, or at least be able to choose who you put trust in. Because I'm not a coder. Like I'm not writing up my firmware and software for my signing device. Like I use one that I buy from a company. I put some trust in them that they are doing with the machine what they say they are. Yeah, there's open source code. Can I read that code? Not really. So is that really for me verifying? Like, no, you do have to put a little bit of trust in certain places, but you with Bitcoin, you have that decision of where to place your trust. You can kind of like pinpoint it.
Well,
You're
and,
not
and
trusted
you
just
can
like the
verify
broad bank.
in other ways too. So
Say
you
that
may
again?
not be able. You can verify in other ways too. You may not be able to
Yes.
verify the code yourself, but if you have trusted resources that tell you, this has worked for me, and this is what, this is why, um, it's entirely different than the current financial system.
100%.
So like with Bitcoin, you learn how it works and then you decide how you're going to use it. With the current financial system, they tell you how you're going to use it.
Uh-huh.
And they tell you like that you can't use it.
This is how you're going to use it.
You're excluded unless you follow these rules. So you must use it in this way and with these rules. And with Bitcoin, it's the exact opposite. You're not required to use it, and then you have to like figure out how it works for
how it can improve your life. Some people it's the savings aspect, which has done wonders for me as far as saving my time and value. Other people see it as a way to, because there's so many attributes to it, and certain, depending on your situation and perspective, you would put those attributes in a different hierarchy. Like for me right now, like it being a savings vehicle is more important than its inconfiscatability, right? Because at this moment,
censorship resistance.
Correct. Like, so, someone that's, living in maybe say China right now, like there's a lot of stuff going on with their zero COVID policy and people pushing back. And like, imagine being a user there. You're worried about, privacy and keeping your family safe and being able to maybe, get out of that country should you choose to with your value. So and that's what we were talking about before. How can Bitcoin work for you? Like it's crazy because it's such a like a in relative spec like a small code base from how I understand, like lines of code wise, and like the robustness that you can use it for, and the malleability is just like that's what really was crazy for me, because like I said, I never thought about money, and then hearing these stories of protesters and then the whole shit in Canada where you do have a major government that just like freezes bank accounts because people are protesting. Like it's the same thing I said before about like Twitter with Trump. Like I was never a Trump fan, but if you can't look at that and say, wow, they banned a sitting president, like the precedent that sets, and then like the image that comes after, like regardless of what side you're on, like you should be able to sit here and say that's not a good idea. Same thing with the Canada stuff, right? And these people were just, I wasn't there, but from what I understand, they were just kind of honking horns. I get public nuisance, all that shit. I understand that, but that deserves them the right to just, cut off their, them from their banking system. And people just overlook the fact that, you enact these policies because your government's in power, and in 4 years, it's probably going to be the government you probably hate, and they have the exact same power that you just, because once again, Anthony, everybody is so short-sighted. They're thinking about today and tomorrow. They're not thinking about 4 years from now or 10 years from now.
Well, yeah, nobody, when looking at a political policy, I feel like a lot of people don't think about what it would be like if the people they don't like have the ability to do that thing. So
I have a great saying. I don't want to interrupt you, but it is,
go ahead. Yeah.
It is anything a politician you love can do to someone you hate, a politician you hate can do to somebody you love. And it is that to a T, that it's like it's up for once it's enacted and is a power, eventually someone you don't like is going to have that power.
Right. And that's why money sucks. Is because
when it's controlled by those in power. Yeah, it's terrible, man.
Yeah. So, when Democrats are in power, they use the printing press to do the things that they want to do. When Republicans are in power, they use the printing press to do things that they want to do. And then what you end up with is just a whole bunch of money that's not worth anything anymore.
Yeah.
A bunch of stuff that didn't get accomplished because it could just be incompetence or it could be corruption. But to have like a 4 to 8 year cycle monetary policy is kind of weird.
Yeah. It's very volatile.
It's extremely volatile. Yeah. What's funny to bring this up is when people talk about the volatility of Bitcoin, it's always volatile priced in dollars, but nobody ever like flips that chart around and go like, holy shit, the dollar's lost 99% of its value.
Well, it's all like we talked about before. We are, somebody else I remember seeing recently was talking about it like you have the Fiat OS operating system, and it's not until you upgrade where that whole mind shift changes to where like, yeah, it depends on your base. Okay, so the reason that our dollar sucks is because it doesn't hold a certain like stagnant value, and that is what alludes to having like poor markets. And you don't have free markets because the thing you're using to value those markets is manipulated, right? So it once you grasp that, and then you understand money and the effects it plays to that, I think that helps becoming a Bitcoiner. But there's so many people who like either don't care or just never like bothered to learn. I think a lot of people don't have time, right? We're like, you're working 40 hours a week. You got a family. You have time to, look into what, money is most times. Probably not. Like you have to like dedicate time to this. It's got to be something you want.
Yeah, well, it's not easy to understand. That's for sure.
No. But what I will say is, I feel like when I first came in, people were open to questions, but they were much more, and maybe it's just bad perspective that I saw. It was much more like it was a lot harder to like be taken seriously when I did have questions that might have, sounded like I was just being a dumb troll. When I like genuinely didn't understand something. And I think over the last like 4 years, at least the community that I've seen and interacted with, especially on Bitcoin Twitter, because before that it was Reddit, and that was terrible. But it's just like same thing with we talk about with StackChain, Anthony, where it's like this subset of like, we're a subset within a subset within a subset. There's just like holes to this. You got Bitcoiners, and then you have like maxis, and then you have like the StackChainers who are literally stacking every day regardless of price, right? Like what's more maxi in my mind than that? Like or you know, even if it's like
Well,
today I
I
did
mean,
4 cents
talk
and
to
5
somebody
cents.
who's into Bitcoin privacy,
Yeah,
and they'll tell you what they think of stack chain,
exactly. And that, like we
right?
talked about, you know, like there's certain, everybody has their prerogative. I mean, we could talk about that. I always said that, you know, yeah, people are showing that they're buying Bitcoin and they are using a KYC exchange, which is obviously not preferred. I don't think anybody would sit here and tell you, yeah, I'd rather you buy KYC Bitcoin than non KYC Bitcoin. 100% buy non KYC Bitcoin. That's the dream here. Okay, but not everybody, one, has the technical level to acquire KYC Bitcoin, either through mining. You know, you'd have to put up like an order on BISC or RoboSats. That's some of the more common ways, or peer to peer. Like, I don't know anybody that's got Bitcoin, and the people that I do know aren't going to sell it to me. You know,
Well,
because
and is it your threat model? Because you just got through talking about what. So, like, the needs of a Bitcoiner in China are very different than the needs of a Bitcoiner in the United States. And,
yeah,
you know, it's, I mean, while I have like a strong distrust of the government,
hmm,
I don't have a strong distrust of the government like citizens of China have a strong distrust of their government.
sure,
You know what I mean? So I could
hmm,
say whatever. I could say that, you know, the US, you know, Washington, D.C., deep state, whatever, but no one's going to kick down my door and make my family disappear.
right
And
now,
that happens over
yeah.
there,
Oh
you know?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
and I, like I say,
yeah.
I don't want to think we're just trying to shit on people. That, like I said, KYC free is the ideal, and having that information readily available for those who do need it is very important, right? I mean, you talk about it in spaces all the time, you know, privacy stuff with, you know, when you withdraw, doing things to try and, you know, hide what you're doing, so it's not easily trackable by the proof that you might have put up on Stack Chain. And at the end of the day, if that's not for you, that's not for you. It's like, no one's telling you you have to do this. Like, that was my whole thing too. Like, I get it, and I'm glad that you are, you know, if you want to use this as a point of, you know, contention to reach more people, sure. That's why I just said, oh, here we go again, you know, because we went through this like 3 months ago with the
Well,
same thing.
and we can't lose as Bitcoiners. We can't lose, right?
Yeah, I'm getting
So,
more sats.
like stack chain is not really for like new people.
Sure.
Like, you're not going to be like a no coiner and then come into stack chain. We're not your speed. Like,
Yeah.
you're not ready for
You're not going to keep
what we're
up.
doing. But you know, if you've been a Bitcoiner for 3 or 4 years and you've come to the conclusion that stacking sats is not just good for you, but it's good like for the world, you know, because you're increasing scarcity, you're taking Bitcoin off of exchanges, which means you're helping to eliminate the power of paper Bitcoin.
Yep.
You're undermining seigniorage, you're increasing, you know, personal sovereignty and teaching other people. All that stuff is great. And if there's a privacy Bitcoiner, like one of these Bitcoiners that are all about, we need to figure out how to do this in a way that's 100% not tied to your identity, can't be traced, can't be tracked, and all privacy. People that listen to them, they're either going to listen to them, and then they're going to become like these uber super private Bitcoin users, which that doesn't cause me a problem that those
Exactly.
people exist. I'm glad those people exist because one day I might need to learn something from those guys, right?
100%.
If somebody listens to them and they're just like, well, no, that's you're taking a little bit too far. Like, I don't need to like erase my phone and, you know, run an open source, you know, FOSS operating system or whatever. I
Like
don't need
Tally or
that.
something. Yeah.
Well, that means that person has evaluated their threat model, and they've
Yeah.
learned something about themselves. There's a lot of people say that there's like wrong ways to Bitcoin. And there's kind of like not wrong ways to Bitcoin. I mean, the only wrong way to Bitcoin is to have zero. That's clearly wrong.
That's the only wrong.
And to let somebody else hold your Bitcoin like an exchange, that's about as equally bad as having zero. You know, otherwise,
you do have zero, Anthony.
yeah, you have
you got bits on. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got numbers on a computer that tell you
Yeah.
that you have Bitcoin. It's the same thing with dollars in our bank account, man. It's just
Yeah.
numbers. Like that's all it is. It's all about, you still got to ask permission to get it. So till you have your keys in your, that you control and no one else does, in my opinion, you don't have Bitcoin. Now, does that mean you're not a Bitcoiner? No, you're just still on your journey, right? That's a part of it. You can be a Bitcoiner without having Bitcoin. That's how I think. Like, having Bitcoin
Interesting.
obviously would help to solidify you as a Bitcoiner, I guess. But you could be a Bitcoiner and not even know it. Like you can come in with the same ethos and mindsets of like time preference and wanting sound money. That's why a lot of like gold bugs kind of just they're Bitcoiners, but they just don't know they're Bitcoiners yet. You know what I mean? Like you see some
Sure.
of these
Sure.
these big gold bugs that find Bitcoin and realize like, oh, this is equally as important, if not more important, than gold for sound money. So I think that's a big concept.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that what we were talking about before with fear comes into play with logic because a lot of these gold bugs just can't hear it. They've
Mm-hmm.
just been doing and I kind of feel bad
Sure.
because for decades and decades these guys were right.
Yeah. If,
And
if Bitcoin wasn't around, Anthony, and we stumbled into this money, we would probably be gold bugs because that is honestly, besides Bitcoin, our next best option. But that's already been, co-opted and paper Bitcoin or paper gold and all that. But we would have, if we were a sound money advocate, you would be a gold bug. It was the fact of the way we came in where we kind of discovered Bitcoin and then discovered sound money, right? That solidified you as Bitcoin because you're like, why? I already know about this great money. When you're a gold bug first, like you said, it is that big step. It's the same kind of mindset shift from going from the fiat world of shit coins and number go up to stacking sats and saving for future value. That was a really good point.
and a lot of these gold bugs, they're older people and they had more personal experiences with like 1971, where it all went down and they've lived an entire life of like fiat debasement. But man, it sucks so bad for them because it's like the papering over of gold has undermined the reality of their argument, and now here's Bitcoin, which is everything, has all the principles of everything that they've stood for their entire lives, and they just can't do it because they can't hold it in their hand. Just that one little.
Well, I also
thing.
think part of it is what's the like the sunken cost fallacy where you
Yeah.
don't want to pull out from something because you're already so invested in it, and that's the big thing too, where you're just kind of, you gotta overcome that fear. I think I'm pretty sure sunken cost fallacy they talk about it's the fear of losing the value that you already attributed to something, and staying in it rather than pulling out what you can and trying something else. It's definitely fear. And it does suck because, like you said, they were right. I mean, they are right. They're just getting
They're still
they're just
right.
getting fucked. Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
getting screwed. I mean, it sucks, man. And like kind of like, go ahead.
Well, and I think the money as a technology thing escapes them because money is a technology,
Mhm.
and that's part of the learning process because we just grow up with slips of paper that represent value, but money has like an engineering purpose of of like the communication of value between one individual and another. It's not, it's the most saleable good. It has to be divisible. It has to be portable. It has to withstand time and be scarce, which, dollars do all of these things except the scarce part. But I think gold bugs are so tied to money is a commodity. Like, it's not a technology.
It's a good.
It's a good. Yeah, they're really tied to it's a good as opposed to it's an engineering solution to a problem. Money is an engineering solution to a problem,
Yeah.
which means, you can make it better.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really funny because my grandfather died maybe when I was like 15 or something. He used to collect coins and stuff. And and my uncles and my other cousins and stuff, no one really cared about them, so I got them, and that's what like started the because I was like I didn't know anything about them. I just thought they were cool, right? And that's kind of like I did that, and then I learned about like silver and like what coins to keep that were actually made of silver, like pre 1964 nickels and certain dimes like were actually made of silver. So I would collect those because I worked at like my late teens. I was working at the same place I work now, but I was just working up front as like a clerk, selling cigarettes, stocking shelves. And so I would come, people have a lot of change, and I would find the coins I wanted and would keep them. And I guess realizing that I had this kind of idea of what was actually like, I knew that I wanted to keep silver, but I didn't know why I wanted silver, right? I knew, it was like, this is something that's actually money. How do I'm trying to say this? Sorry. I was keeping it for not the reason of it being better money. It was just different and not like the stuff we use today. So it was just different. And that's why I kept it. And then like after I learned about money and realizing like the whole concept of it, it was like, oh, I was just like, I got lucky. And then I started collecting bills. But the best thing I ever did was sell all those shitty paper bills for Bitcoin.
Well, without you knowing it, you realized that the silver coins, the U.S. money that was actually made out of silver, was unique and special because it was rare.
Yeah.
And you
Fair
inherently just figured out that scarcity has value. So I should hang on to these because there's less of these than these other ones that aren't made out of silver that they can pump out by the millions. They're not doing that with these.
Thank you for wrapping that up in a nice bow for me, because
I love it. I love it because I feel it, and I can understand like the appreciation of coins and stuff. Like it, it's cool. I'd had silver and gold coins.
Yeah. But now I just collect hyperinflated bills. So
but that's but you don't do that
different
because you find like value in them necessarily. They're just super interesting to you.
Yeah, especially after the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But I honestly don't remember why I started on that coin story, but sorry.
Well, because we were talking about how the gold bugs, like they have it right, but they just can't make this one last little leap. And I feel bad for them because I think we wouldn't have Bitcoin if it wasn't for them. So I bet you that whoever inspired Satoshi, whether Satoshi was an individual or a group of individuals, they obviously had a very clear understanding of sound money, of hard money. And whoever they were, they probably learned it from gold bugs.
Oh yeah. Well, wasn't Chami and eCash one of the references in the white paper? Which I'm pretty sure, or no, not that. Sorry, the BitGold. Was that Zabo?
BitGold. Yeah.
So like all of this idea of sound money before Bitcoin, it was gold. That was your soundest money, right? And so if you're trying to create a better money, having gold there, obviously it's like, what do they say? Like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like gold did this for thousands of years.
You just bring up an interesting point that I think a lot of people don't hear enough. And one of the criticisms of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is like the early technology.
Oh yeah, the MySpace.
Yeah, that it's so it's going to be replaced by something better. And what people don't understand is that there was many attempts to do this before Bitcoin. It's just like you just brought up, like BitGold and Hashcash, and there's all these things where people have been trying to do this for a long time, and it didn't work for a variety of reasons. Most of it appeared to be centralization.
Yep, definitely.
They would gain some traction, and then somebody wouldn't like what they were doing, a government or whatever, and they say, hey, you guys need to knock that off. And because it was centralized on somebody's servers, they just, send lawyers or maybe men with guns or whatever.
There was a guy that did the Liberty dollars. I don't know if you know about that. And it was just one dude doing it. And they came and they arrested him and they threw his ass in jail. And then that was the end of Liberty dollars, right? The fact that it is decentralized and there is no Bitcoin headquarters to go knock on and serve a warrant or, whatever they would try to throw at it is I didn't even know the value of decentralization before. I knew it, I just didn't appreciate it, I guess, right? And then seeing how it is how it changes the whole dichotomy of money and economies, realizing how it can change other things. Like you mentioned before, you and Skinner were talking about like not your keys, not your data, and how much data we just give to everybody. I was talking to my cousin yesterday, and another little saying I love to drop is, you've heard it, like, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product.
Yeah.
To something, like if you're not paying for something, they're taking the data and your marketing likes and all that shit, and they're turning that into something they can sell. And my cousin's like, oh, well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I'm like, well, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Like there is always economic value being gained or lost somewhere. It's not always. So
no, there's a reason why these companies that largely have free products are multi-billion-dollar companies. It's not because they're giving stuff away for free.
No, exactly. They just, they aggregate people, and they offer a service that people find value. And I'm not shitting on that model because I don't agree with it, but it is a viable business model, right? You offer a product that people want, and in turn, whether they know it or not, or giving you data about them that you can then sell to people who want to know that stuff. Obviously, if there was a way to have it completely, obfuscated and like encrypted, and so that, you couldn't go look me up in the server and see all of my, porn search histories or whatever, you know what I mean? Like the fact that it's not a single place and that you can't attribute one to, it's the pseudonymity of I always butcher this word, pseudo-anonymity of Bitcoin, where you can track wallets, but
well done.
Thank you. But you can track the wallets, but you can't make that connection to a human person unless there's that KYC link. Which brings you back to that is why there is such a focus on trying to get KYC free Bitcoin and not having that established connection.
And KYC is attached to your identity. It's not actually attached to the Bitcoin, right? Like once the Bitcoin goes out into the wild, if I buy 100 Bitcoin, and that's KYC, the government knows that I bought 100 Bitcoin. That's what KYC means. And that's all it means. If I send 1 Bitcoin from me to you, that 1 Bitcoin isn't KYC'd.
Well, it's not like there's a label on it that says this is Anthony's Bitcoin, but because the blockchain is transparent, right? They can see that. Well, what it would be is we have to lay some fundamentals. Are you on an exchange, right? So you buy 100 Bitcoin on whatever, FTX. Well, guess what? It's gone. Anyways, you buy it on an exchange and you're transferring it out. Like you have to put a withdrawal wallet address in there. And that I'm sure is being tracked. So when they go, hey, Anthony bought these 100 Bitcoin. Where did he, was there any withdrawals from his account? Oh, here's the address he withdrew to. So then that's the link that they make. That's what, we could do that. If we know your wallet, where you're withdrawing from, you could track something. But it's the government having the list of all your information connected with a regulated exchange that has to give that information should they ask, right? That's the connection that once that's established, unless you do some mixing or some, collaborative spend.
Basically, the idea is like that KYC information is not held on chain. So
okay, correct. That's all external to the network.
Yeah, it's external to Bitcoin's network. Bitcoin doesn't know that it's KYC'd. It doesn't know that it's not KYC'd. And that one UTXO that I sent to you, it doesn't know that it used to belong to me. And then when you spend half of it and give it to your neighbor for mowing your lawn, and then you keep half of it and it gets split up, Bitcoin doesn't know that, 4 transactions ago, that used to be Anthony's Bitcoin.
100% correct.
So the KYC part only applies to the government's knowledge that I bought and or sold it. And that's people seem to have this opinion like it's painted onto the Bitcoin in some way and it follows it forever.
That's fair. That's fair.
As it travels around in the wild, you have no idea. I mean, people make how many Americans have made donations to people in other countries for various things. Donations to El Salvador, to Nigeria, Bitcoin Island, or whatever. That's just Bitcoin that just flowed into there. At one point in time, like 99% of that was KYC Bitcoin from some American, and that Bitcoin is never going back to that guy's account.
No,
because now it's gone to El Salvador, and now it's bouncing back and forth between the lady that sells pupusas and the waiter at the hotel or whatever. It's just bouncing around until it ends up at some Bitcoin ATM where somebody deposits it and pulls out cash. And then it gets re-KYC'd. So technically speaking, that this just for the sake of numbers, let's say it was 1 Bitcoin. So I bought 100. I sent 1 to El Salvador. It bounced around the El Salvadorian, economy, and then came out the other end at an ATM. That 1 Bitcoin has been KYC twice now. So who is it really attached to?
Well, yeah. Well, I guess the best way to clarify that, it's the UTXO that is KYC'd, right?
Right.
Because once that UTXO is destroyed and a new one is created with a new output, it's not fundamentally there. And that's, I think, a big point. One thing I want to bring up is that's why people talk about like making hops and I always bring up that coin joining and collaborative spends are good for forward-looking privacy, but doesn't break backwards-looking privacy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? Like that, without that, because of how easily you can traverse the blockchain and follow transactions back through the network, all you need, like that singular link to that UTXO in the beginning, and that wallet that you withdrew from. That I think that's one of the biggest things people should. If you are buying KYC coin, you should have almost like spin up a different wallet every time you're withdrawing from an exchange. So it's not everything. Obviously, it's a different address, but I'm talking like a whole different like wallet. Like uninstall your shit, create a new seed, have it be brand new. Because as you pull more to that, you're just like building that profile. Because all these things must work off of like probability. How probable is this person's UTXO from this guy here? And as you do more steps in between and different wallets, and I think Moon is a really good option because you can get on chain, send out Lightning really easy, and that helps to break those links. You just need to do it. We talked about this before. You just need to not be the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, well, and we've had conversations about this, but I'll go ahead and say it anyways. Like my threat model is not the government. My threat model is leaving a trail behind that somebody can find, not the government, that can cause me problems, either a hacker, wrench attack, or something like that, right?
Correct.
And so because of institutions like the IRS, because of, KYC and AML laws, they already know that I buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And, buying Bitcoin is not illegal. So I have not broken the law. So I don't really have any concerns just to the fact that I bought Bitcoin. I know that the thought process is, well, what if one day Bitcoin is banned and then they'll come after you? All right. Then I guess that happens.
Well, see, Anthony, though, if that happens and we have Bitcoin, we can just go to favorable jurisdiction if we have to. I mean, obviously, if not everybody has enough. I don't have enough Bitcoin to just up and move, but I have the ability to take my value with me wherever I can get to. And that whole thing too is just,
well, because there have been times in history where people had to flee with their wealth, and it's much easier to flee with your wealth stored in Bitcoin than anything else. I mean, how many stories are there of like, Jews fleeing Nazi occupied Germany,
like
with
lining,
gold.
Gold hangers and lining of shirts gold so that they could smuggle it out.
And sometimes they made it and sometimes they didn't. And either way, it was a horrible, awful experience.
Sure.
And had they had something like Bitcoin, you just remember your seed. And, when the bad guys come to search you, they're not going to find anything because you don't physically have anything on you. So God bless you. Hopefully you make it from the dangerous place to the safe place in one piece. If you have Bitcoin, that's better.
Have you read Mandibles at all?
No.
The book? Okay, so I don't know if you're a reader. I'm not much of a reader too, but since you're a Bitcoiner and you're into like money and stuff, you should really read it. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. You got a family and everything. But if you're looking for something to read, I just got through one of the chapters in the book where like they basically like outlaw gold again, and you're not allowed to have like gold possessions, and it's the government coming into the house and searching the house and doing that whole raid. And there's like a young kid who's like, well, see, you have to understand this is just like for show, kind of. They're not expecting, to find the gold. They're trying to intimidate people to give up their gold, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not doing this. It's going to be the same thing. It's not going to. I don't think people are going to be going like the government outlaws Bitcoin. Are they going to come to my house? Maybe, because obviously I'm KYC'd on certain things. But also, I think at that point we would be already so ahead of that we would kind of know what's coming, and we would, I feel like Bitcoiners would be on top of that. But maybe that's just me being, biased.
Bitcoiners are very well prepared for things. We'll say that.
It was
just as a community.
When COVID started, and they were all like, Bitcoin Twitter was like, you guys should buy some masks. Like Bitcoin Twitter was on that before anybody else was on that. Like, because one, they also understood what was coming with the economic situation and this demand for masks. They, you see 6 months later, even if, regardless of whether you think a mask works or not, if you wanted a mask, you couldn't even get one. Like I worked at a store, like a corner store, where I had to tell people to wear a mask to come in. Like that was our local jurisdiction and what the laws were, with all this shit going on. And I couldn't even get a mask to give somebody because I couldn't buy them. I couldn't even buy them for my guys. Like we had to buy like the most janky from some janky website, super untrustworthy. Like because Bitcoiners understood how economies work and they have a good grasp on it, they knew like, oh, you should be buying masks right now. They were on it, dude. It was freaky how much they were on it.
Nice. Well, my guy, we have blown well past an hour.
Okay. So I told you I could ramble, Anthony.
No, this is fantastic. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Before we go, what advice would you give a new Bitcoiner or a person new to Bitcoin? Like, what is something you wish you had known?
I don't know. I'm like stumped. Not to say that there's nothing that I wish.
This is a hard question.
I would have
to like stop asking this question. I
think it's a good question, Anthony, because I want to make sure I have like a well thought out answer. Because normally I would just blurt out like, do your own research. Like, yeah, you can, even if you can't read, like I talked about before, even if you can't read the Bitcoin code and you can't audit it yourself, find educated people that you can trust in the space that you feel have the same interests aligned and, or for the same mission as you, and ask questions. I think that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I was for a long time, reach out to people. One of the first guys I remember reaching out to on Bitcoin Twitter was Ronin Miner, because he literally had in his like bio was like, all questions are okay if they're in good faith type of thing. Like we're like basically saying like, you can reach out. And even if you have a dumb question or you ask some type of shitcoiny question, if you're asking in good faith, you will get an answer. So ask questions. Most people watching this are probably already stack chainers, so we all agree that we don't even check the price anymore, right? Like it's stack height. Like where's the stack chain at? For the people that do still look at the price all the time, like that was me. I used to always have a chart up, like no matter what I was doing, just because I was interested and I'd want to know if it pumped 10% or even if it was like 2%. I don't know that I was still attracted to it because of the price, the exchange rate of it. And now it's like, even before stack chain, I just, I didn't check prices nearly as much. And I just had this like sever of, why I was here. And like, we all talk about being convicted and having this conviction and like just really doubling down on it. And like I said, meeting all you guys out at PB was fucking awesome. So if you can get to a Bitcoin meetup, even if it's just something small in your hometown, do it. Like I said, it lit a fire under my ass to kind of get out of this like complacent job I've been in. It's just, there's just nothing like it, man. I'm looking forward to next year already.
Nice. I think ask questions is an excellent answer to the question. Because if you're asking questions, then you're seeking truth.
Yeah,
And
100%.
in all the bad things in the world where people want to do bad things to you or take from you or steal from you, they don't want you to ask questions. They want to tell you what is what, and don't ask questions. Believe me, believe what I'm saying. I am the authority. Bitcoin doesn't ask you to do that. Bitcoin says ask all the questions.
Yeah, you can ask whatever you want.
Yeah.
Fully transparent.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to sign off with that, guys.
All right.
False, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
As
Ask
always,
all the
Anthony.
questions.
Well, for people
Have
who
fun.
don't know too, sorry, Anthony, to interrupt you, but I knew Anthony before he was the guy, but the face of Stack Chain. We fell in together in Guy Swan's group. So this is a good dude, and it's really, like I said before, it's really cool to have done this, but also have done it with somebody that I knew beforehand. We didn't interact nearly as much as we do now, and just like having this as something to bring people together that we're acquaintances with is really rewarding.
Well,
so
and
make friends.
that's the purpose of this, False, is because
Yeah.
I met so many amazing people that all of you have interesting things to say. And, there's so much in the Bitcoin community that doesn't get shared.
Mm-hmm.
And, what's my mantra on Spaces? There's nothing that I'm going to say that hasn't already been said better by somebody else, but I just might be the guy that says it in the way that you need to hear it and in the time that you need to hear it. Well, you know what, False? You might be the guy. And Skinner might be the guy.
Yeah.
And Tao might be the guy.
Tao's
There's a lot of
definitely the guy.
wisdom in Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners, maybe it's just a phase of adoption that we're in, but Bitcoiners are kind of like above average in motivation and desire to seek the truth, because it's once you get past number go up, then it's about like philosophy and like understanding the world and seeing it in a different, more honest way. And that's kind of what the show is about, because I know that there's a lot of really good people that have a lot of really good stuff inside them, and they're not going to end up on a show. and they should.
Yeah, unless you catch one of the random spaces.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So with this, guys, like False said, don't be afraid to ask questions and have fun stacking sats.
Stack sides, feeling brown, I got no cash. Can't afford the tip, got me feeling kinda sad, but we glad. I sleep up your whole bag, selling my chairs to get a couple cents. I'll suck it next week, cause I hit my limit. Never with a swan, just to get some digits. Good for you, stay back, I ain't talking feelings. You know what I mean, take bad decisions.
Yo, Q, I like what you're doing. There's a fork up on the tip and it's leaving me clueless. Stacking sets up on the chain, taking up my whole day. Hella blocks up in the noties that we had to validate. So stack a block, join a block.